May 22, 1944. North of the Admiralty Islands, pre-dawn sea running a slow swell under a moon like a clipped coin. The Buckley-class destroyer escort USS England, DE-635, knifes east by northeast at 14 knots. Bridge windows open to the wet wind and the smell of hot oil. On the Polaris, Lieutenant Commander Walton B. Pendleton keeps his face impassive, chin tucked into the collar of his kapok-lined jacket. To starboard and port, the silhouettes of sister ships, USS George, DE-697, and USS Raby, DE-698, rise and fall in the dark as the three tin cans hold a line abreast sweep. Aboard George, Commander Hamilton Haynes, officer in tactical command, rides herd on the formation, his voice a clipped metronome across the TBS radio net. This is a hunter-killer run, born of Codebreakers' warnings that a Japanese submarine picket line waits up ahead. The job? Tear a gap through it. Below the bridge, the sonar shack glows a sickly green. Headphones clamp down on seaman Roger Bernhardt's ears, sweat slicking the bakelite pads as he chases wafer-thin echoes through the sea's static. Aft, the Hedgehog projector sits like a squat iron crown at the bow's knuckle. 24 spigots that can throw a ring of contact-fused bombs 200-plus yards ahead of the ship. The thing is ugly, brutally simple, and perfectly designed for the work at hand. No guessing at depth, no waiting for pattern charges to sink astern. If the warheads hit steel, they explode, and if they don't, there's only silence. Men trust that silence. It means the target is still out there, still being held on the wire. 351. George calls a blip. Surface radar, 14,000 yards, bearing 303. A searchlight's ghost-pale bar lances out and, for a breath, paints a low, moving shadow, the telltale of a small sub caught between veils of swell. The contact dives. Raby charges in and throws a hedgehog pattern. No detonations. The sea slurps, folds, and then resumes its endless saw. England, already slewing to interdict, catches the whisper on her sonar 10 minutes later. On the bridge, Pendleton leans in, and beside him the executive officer, Lieutenant John A. Williamson, steady hands on the con, repeats the attack course. In combat, men track bearing rate and range like gamblers counting cards. In the shack, Bernhardt's voice rises and falls. Contact steady. Mark. Closing. Good sound. The first run misses. There is no shame in it. The sea is treachery made liquid, and a fighting submarine is all elbows and teeth underwater, knifing and corkscrewing under the layer. England swings back, screws biting water, bow throwing chop. The second run, timing and geometry and gut, goes out in a tight, deliberate ripple. 24 bombs arc forward and vanish. Seconds spool out, taut as a bridge cable. Then, 3 crisp detonations in quick succession, each one a flat fist striking the hull. No thunder of depth charges rolling over, just those hard, fast hammer blows that mean contact. In the plotting room, a pencil lifts from the paper. On the bridge, Pendleton's head turns a fraction, listening to the air. Williamson doesn't look away from the gyro repeater. They both know what 3 hits can mean in a tight pattern. It means you've chased the enemy into your ring. It means he bled when he tried to slip. It means this hunt just turned mortal. At 0501, England steadies for a third attack as the bearing holds sweetly stubborn. Minutes later, the ocean answers with a deep, body-felt concussion, the kind that heaves a ship's fantail and sucks breath from the lungs. Oil rises in black fans, bits of cork, wood, an enamel mug, a torn scrap of chart, things that only come up when steel splits and a pressure hull gives. The skipper does not cheer. He nods once, to no one in particular. Somewhere under them, the crew of RO-106 has gone silent. When the sun finally edges the horizon, the hunter line tightens again. The sea looks emptied, as if chastened by its own violence. Haynes's voice comes across the net, praising the run, pushing the team back into station, already thinking ahead, because Frupak's decrypts warned that RO-106 was not alone. The Japanese 7th Submarine Squadron had strung a barrier north of the Admiralties. RO-104, RO-105, RO-106, RO-108, RO-116, RO-117, waiting to catch an American carrier sweep. Instead, 3 little escorts have found them first. The men aboard England can feel the change in their own bodies, the way hands move faster to work, the way cigarettes burn down unnoticed, the way superstitions get mouthed into damp sleeves. They have proof now. The Hedgehog is not a promise, it is a verdict. Pendleton lets the XO drive the next setups. He's seen Williamson fight the ship in drills, watched the way he trusts the soundman and rides the bearing like a wire walker. The crew appreciates it too, a kind of liturgy. Captain on the bridge, XO on the con, CIC murmuring ranges and target motion analysis in the tone of accountants totaling a ledger of debts. Out at the bow, the projector crew clean, reload, relubricate. Hands black with grease and graphite, they joke about the Hedgehog's ugliness, call it names to defang it, then pat the casings the way men pat a shotgun before a hunt. In the shack, Bernhardt dials gain, dances the line between signal and sea, breathes in time with the ping. He thinks about nothing except the next echo. Below decks, men in the engineering spaces feel the ship's hunger in the pitch of the screws. Steam tangles with the reek of diesel and hot paint. In the mess, a few cooks pretend to finish coffee while waiting for the next general quarters drill that won't be a drill. The ordinary acts, whittling a toothbrush, tightening a loose strap on a kapok, are how you spit in fear's eye without looking at it directly. At mid-morning, the lookouts pick out the feathered sheen of oil far astern, a dark calligraphy scrawled by the current. The sea writes its own report. England does not linger to read it. The hunter line stretches again, 3 small ships on a vast table, sliding across likely water. Men think of the Japanese skippers out there, careful, wily, sweating under red lamps, knowing the barrier line is a sword that cuts both ways. Somewhere to the west of Manus, 700 feet down, pressure smashes a broken hull flatter than memory. It is ugly, necessary work. And every man on England knows there's no gloat in it, only the math of war. If we don't kill them here, they will kill us elsewhere. By noon, the tropical sky has gone white and hard. The ships draw in toward each other to pass messages and maintain the net. Some of the enlisted men grin as a school of flying fish skitters across England's bow, bright as coins in a fountain. Williamson laughs once. A short, surprised bark, and then the bridge is all business again as the XO folds a chart and points out the next legs. Over the radio, Haynes sets new search intervals for nightfall. 16,000 yards between ships, wide enough to cover water, tight enough to bring weight to bear when a contact breaks surface. In the wardroom, a battered copy of a detective novel lies face down beside a mug ring. Someone has underlined a paragraph about inevitability. The irony goes unremarked. The next thing is always more important than the last. In CIC, the talk turns to bearings and drift and how the Japanese like to jig and false target by altering screw speeds. The senior soundman nods and pinches the bridge of his nose. He's seen the tricks. He teaches the young ones to hear around them, the difference between a porpoise and a reduction gear, between thermal layer and a man praying to live. Afternoon slants toward evening. England's tinny loudspeaker calls the Hedgehog crew to stand to, and boots clatter on steel. Up on the bridge, Pendleton rubs a thumb across the brass face of the gyro repeater as though polishing it for luck. He doesn't look like a lucky man. No gambler's grin, no flamboyant streak. He looks like a foreman who keeps a job book and remembers every name in it. The presidential unit citation that will one day hang in frames has no place in his head now. What he carries instead are a line of positions, a string of bearings, a whistle in his ear that is a young soundman saying, "Good sound, sir, good sound." Dusk comes as a soft ambush, red wind, prickly heat. The first stars like anchor lights. Haynes's final instructions for the night go out. Maintain line, report all contacts. Raby, your tail. George, your middle. England, your head. Keep your men fed, we're going to be at this a while. The words carry no bravado. They are a statement of physics and will. Out in the dark, RO-104 slides into the night's mouth, unaware that 3 small escorts have just rewritten the way a submarine line dies. Hidden sequence, harried without respite, caught in a geometry that favors the hunter for once. In the radio room, Sparks taps down a succinct contact log and pins the newest page to the board. In the galley, a sailor spoons out beans without being asked twice. On the forward deck, a kid from Iowa who has not yet decided whether to be afraid looks up into the stars and thinks of home. And then of the sound of 3 crisp detonations, all that separates him from a cold black room 700 feet below. By full dark, England is a dim wedge of wake and will. Men lean into their work as though leaning into a gale. The Hedgehog waits, patient as a trap. The sea holds its breath. Somewhere ahead, another propeller turns. Night clamps down like a hand over a lamp. England runs at 12 knots, spray fanning off the bow, the forward Hedgehog glistening with salt. On the bridge, Lieutenant J.G. John A. Williamson, the XO, has the con. Lieutenant Commander Pendleton stands with one elbow on the bridge wing combing, a cigarette cupped in his palm, ember ghosting his face in the wind. Off the port and starboard quarters, Raby and George hold their intervals, 3 little smudges of wake in a Pacific the size of a continent. TBS murmurs in the speaker. Commander Hamilton Haynes's voice is level and spare. Head maintain course. Tail offset 10 degrees for comb. All ships report good sound. In the sonar shack, Seaman Roger Bernhardt leans in, skull cinched under headphones, hands feathering the gain knob. He builds a mental picture out of the metronome ping and the whisper-thin answers that come back. The beat of England's own screws, the hush of thermals shifting. Somewhere, a scatter of fish like sleigh bells lost in fog. Then, a thread, faint but regular. He whispers, possible 270 relative, slow bearing rate. The shack chief rests a hand on the bulkhead, feeling vibration as much as hearing it. He nods once and sounds the bridge. Upstairs, Williamson tilts his head, listening. Mark it. Contact firms, bearings creep. The plot in CIC turns from chalk scratches to a track with a pulse. Aboard George, radar picks a pale seed on the scope, something small, low, moving. Then it fades. The contact has gone deep and quiet. England edges over a degree at a time, keeping the wire tight. The men atop the forward deck crouch by the Hedgehog mount, breath fogging the barrel throats, waiting for the order that will snap all this tension into motion. Stand by, Hedgehog. Standing by. The first attack run is textbook. Williamson takes the ship down the bearing, the bow lifting and dropping as if nodding consent, helm answering with a whisper of rudder. At 180 yards, the firing key drops. 24 projectiles arc away in a hiss, a phantom bouquet thrown into the night. The sea swallows them whole. 10 seconds stretch to 11, 12, nothing. No hard, crisp detonations. No dull roll of depth charges either. England doesn't waste time guessing at depths now. The quiet is not failure, it is information. The target evaded. Bernhardt calls, lost contact, wait, reacquiring, new bearing 268, opening, target is turning. He can almost feel the Japanese skipper's hands on the yoke, the boat twisting to slide under the pattern's edge. Come left 2 degrees, ahead 15. Williamson's voice is steady as the ship answers, screws biting deep, bow wave shouldering aside. The second run is shorter. The target has grown bolder, perhaps desperate, trying to knife across England's track. The projector crew has already reloaded, hands black with graphite and sweat. Fire! The Hedgehog spits again. The ocean holds its breath. Crack, crack, crack! 3 flat, intimate punches. Even with the bridge windows dogged, the men feel it through their boots and teeth. Hits, CIC reports, calm as a ledger. Pendleton doesn't move, but the set of his jaw changes. He hears the difference between rumor and proof. In the shack, Bernhardt lets out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Then he's back on the set, because sometimes a wounded sub claws away into the dark. England circles, hunting the dead water. The third run is caution braided with aggression. No hurry, no dillied aim. Across the net, Haynes acknowledges, shifts Raby and George to block the avenues of escape. Somewhere below, rivets scream in their holes as pressure works at a hull that wasn't meant to take this kind of punishment at this depth. A minute later, a low concussion climbs up through the keel. Then the surface writes its brief, brutal epitaph, an upwelling of oil as black and iridescent as crow feathers, chips of wood, a square of rubber that might have been a valve boot, a cork float, a twisted section of copper tubing. There is nothing to cheer here. Just the certainty that RO-104 has joined her sister far below, the barrier line already fraying. Haynes's voice again, as precise as a scalpel. Well done, England. Maintain sweep. George, Raby, resume stations. The three-ship net breathes and lengthens. Watches change. The galley pushes coffee like contraband. Men whoop once, quietly, then go back to their lists and lanyards. Nothing magical has happened. Something mechanical has. The correct application of angle, patience, and an ugly little projector that tells the truth, or not at all. The next day dawns white and hard. Condition able is set for cruising. Hands are rotated, laundry strung aft snaps like signal flags in the trade wind. The ship smells of salt, coffee, gun oil, paint, men who have worked too long in the same clothes. Up in CIC, the team reconstructs the night's geometry on the chart. The RO picket line's intended arc now a broken chain. Intel had warned of a Japanese screen north of the Admiralties, meant to spot and report an American task force pushing toward the Marianas. Instead, 3 destroyer escorts, called tin cans with a mix of affection and contempt even by their own fleetmates, are sawing that screen into pieces. By afternoon, the tropical glare softens to a pewter sheen. England sound gear hums, the constant ping. The faint choruses that the trained ear can parse into possibility or nonsense. Mid-watch, another whisper forms out of the sea's mutter. This one cautious, slow, almost timid. Bearing 243, very slight motion. New contact, Bernhardt says, his voice kept deliberately bored. He never lets the adrenaline onto the wire. It can be contagious. On the bridge, Williamson and Pendleton exchange a glance that lasts less than a heartbeat. Execute. Raby and George slide to their posts in the invisible geometry of the hunt. The first run misses wide. There's a layer down there, a slippery pane of colder water bending the sound. The roll of the ship changes as Williamson pushes for bite. Come right, hold at 1-6. The second run straddles. Nothing. The third, tight, measured, with the ship's own wake still slick beside her, connects. 4 detonations in a heartbeat, then a pause, then something deeper and slower that rolls England like a hand under the hull. RO-116, trying to crawl between the teeth of the comb, has taken the ring of iron in the ribs. But the ocean rarely grants quick endings twice in a row. The wreck's boil confuses bearings, and for 20 minutes the picture degrades. Phantom targets, scattering shrimp, a thermal that slithers like a rug pulled up by a corner. The trick of this work is not aggression, though there is plenty of that. It is persistence without panic. England holds the line. Hames keeps the net taut. Bernhardt talks them onto what matters and off the ghosts. When the sea clears its throat again, the contact that remains is the one with a rhythm to it. A human rhythm. The stubborn heartbeat of a diesel boat that hasn't quite realized it's bleeding out. A final Hedgehog ripple ends the argument. Oil rises, silence falls. There is a grim routine to the aftermath. Log the time, circle the slick, note flotsam, pass a word to the crew that is more order than celebration. Resume search. The ship's bell marks the hour with a hollow peal that seems absurdly ceremonial against the business at hand. England turns onto a new leg. Men go back to their stations with hands that won't stop shaking until they're wrapped around a mug. Night again. Clouds scud low, shadows you can feel in your ears. England heads the line. Raby and George are close enough that their masthead lights flicker and vanish behind a swell like signal lamps playing coy. Down in the machinery spaces, the world is hot and damp and loud. Up on the forecastle, the Hedgehog mount gleams like a thing out of a coal breaker. The mount captain, a petty officer from Ohio who used to fix farm combines, runs a hand over the smooth fuse noses and mutters a short private catechism. Do your job and we'll do ours. Past midnight, a peep on George's radar becomes a promise. Then the promise breaks water as a periscope trace that vanishes the instant a searchlight blinks. RO-108 perhaps, or a decoy. It doesn't matter what it calls itself, it only matters where it is and how fast its propellers are turning. England goes to general quarters with a sound like a deck full of hammers. Williamson takes the con with that preternatural stillness that makes a man look carved. Pendleton's silhouette stays on the wing, one hand on the bulkhead, feeling the mood of his ship through steel. The first two runs are misses in the way all misses are. Beautiful geometry applied to an opponent determined to survive. The third brings them so close that the forward lookouts swear they hear something below, a kind of iron groan, which is ridiculous, the mind making music out of stress. The fourth, Hedgehog rippling in a tight oval, pays off. 2 detonations, then a third. In CIC, a pencil that has been tapping the chart stops tapping. Hits, comes the voice that could be reading off laundry weights. Another minute, and the ocean dishes up its cold communique. Oil, bubbles, a scrap of wood that might once have been a locker slat. The second mate crosses himself without irony. The kid from Iowa stares and then looks away. Under the red lights in the wardroom, a yeoman files the kill reports in a folder that was never meant to fatten this quickly. A boatswain tie-wraps a sagging locker, because entropy never sleeps. In the radio room, Sparks leans back and rubs the bridge of his nose, half hoping for a friendly signal that will never come, because security is a jealous god out here. Toward dawn, the line breathes again and resets. The water is a darker black now, polished and depthless. Somewhere out there, 2 more RO boats slide along a curve of ocean that the Americans now own through nerve and practice. Behind England's wake, the story of the hunt has no trumpet, no drum. Only a series of choices, each cold as a knife's back edge. Hold the bearing, trust the sound, fire when it's time, and let the ocean tell you what you did. The sun is still below the rim when Haynes's voice comes over TBS once more. Maintain stations. We have more company. On the bridge, Pendleton steps inside and stubs his cigarette, the last coal era of war dying against painted steel. Williamson nods at nothing, and the helmsman licks dry lips and leans on his wheel as if he can feel the next turning through his palms. The Hedgehog crew pats their mount the way men pat the flank of a good horse at dawn. Somewhere ahead, metal turns in the black. England tilts her bow toward it, small, implacable, a blade on a whetstone. The ocean holds its breath again. May 26, 1944. Before dawn can pry a seam in the sky, England's decks gleam with sweat, salt, and spray, her bow biting a small chop the way a file bites steel. The night contact has come apart in 3 sharp Hedgehog detonations in a deeper, organ-low thud that rolled underfoot. Now the sea leaves its verdict in the wake. A smear of oil rainbowing in the dim, a tangle of bubbled air, a sodden square of cork. CIC marks the plot with a tiny cross and the time. The radio men log it without adjectives. Somewhere below, a hole has stopped arguing with the Pacific. The name will come later, RO-108, the way names always do out here, after the water has made its curtness known. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Walton B. Pendleton rubs heat from his hands and passes the con back to his executive officer. Lieutenant J.G. John A. Williamson steadies England to course. The helmsman's knuckles are pale on the wheel, not from fear so much as from the way work and wakefulness can turn muscles to wire. Aft, the projector crew swabs the Hedgehog's spigots, reloads with the practiced, affectionate brutality of men who know exactly where their fingers go in the dark. They call the mount ugly, the way you nickname a dog so ugly it circles back to handsome. Maintain formation, Commander Hamilton Haynes's voice ticks over TBS. Calm, clipped, more engine than man. Head resumes search, tail and middle hold comb. George and Raby settle back onto their invisible rails, the 3 destroyer escorts now a moving diagram Haynes can see in his head even when the scopes are blind. Daylight arrives with a brittle hum in the air, heat already pooling on paint, the rope smell turning sweet and then sour. England sets condition able for steaming. The galley pushes thick coffee down a line of hands. Somebody in dungarees trades a joke that doesn't land, so he shrugs and pockets it for a luck charm. Up in the sonar shack, Seaman Roger Bernhardt resets his world to the size of a set of headphones. The ping is the metronome. The sea's answers, sighs, mutters, whines, compose a recalcitrant choir. He pulls the gain down a hair, then up a hair. Good water, he tells himself, though good water means only that if something is out there, he'll hear it. It doesn't promise there will be something. Noon slides past. The chart gains pencil scars. The ship gains a patina of the day. The smut of the stacks on the mast. The salt itch under collars. The fatigue that makes ordinary laughter sound too loud. Bernhardt drinks tepid water from a dented canteen and lets the ping stitch its thread through him. When contact comes, it is a ghost with poor manners. Faint, irregular, as if a fish shoal learned to imitate a screw. Possible at 220 relative, he says dully. Very slow bearing rate. The shack chief leans on the bulkhead and nods once, transmitting calm back through steel. On the bridge, Williamson makes a small correction. Then another, shaping a run that will test the thing's reality without throwing away position. The Hedgehog crew is already poised, fuse caps gleaming like damp bone in the shadow under the mount. The first run is all practice. Good lines, clean math, the ocean answering with an exaggerated shrug. No contacts comes CIC's dry reply, which is information, not comfort. Reacquire, Pendleton says, the single word carrying no more than it has to. Bernhardt dips, listens, imagines a pale line in the dark, feels the target's reluctance to be heard. New bearing 218, opening a hair. Come left 1, ahead 15. England leans into it. The deck talk goes quiet, the practical jokes deferred. The second run is a deliberate lie told to the ocean. Present one geometry to make the boat believe it can slip through, then show the truth. Fire. 24 projectiles leap in an orderly hiss. Silence. 9 seconds long. 10. And then 3 fast knocks that feel like a gloved fist on the hull. No theatrics, no swell of noise. The kind of sound that says contact fuses did what they were built to do. CIC pencils the time, the bearing, the number of explosions. Nobody says RO108 yet. They say hits, and stand by to regain, and plot shows dead water in the circle. England wheels back, not to admire the oil, but to be sure the kill isn't faint. Sometimes a sub rips itself free in a panic and runs straight into the next pattern. The third attack is careful, almost tender. Hold 217, Williamson says, body reading the ship's balance through boots and wheel. When no more detonations come, just the slow, ugly rise of black, the bridge lets air out of its lungs in a single communal breath they didn't know they were holding. Mark finished with target, CIC says. The navigator adds a neat notation on the chart that will be unremarkable to a stranger and unforgettable to the hands who made it. Haynes's voice. Well done, England. Resume sweep. There is no trumpet in him. There is a clock. Somewhere to the west, more steel moves in the dark. The days that follow are not empty, only quiet. Quiet is its own theater. The 3 ships keep the comb wide, like fingers raking a carpet. England's crew move in a ritual that grows almost liturgical. Stand to, check the mount, listen, drink coffee, listen again. The first day after RO108, a small rain comes in through the scuppers and knocks the dust out of the air. The drops pattering on steel like a hand drumming thoughtlessly on a table. The second day brings a squat, gnarled swell from a distant storm. The ship's pitch changing in a way that makes every step a choice. Bernhardt teaches a brand new sound man, a kid with ears too eager to hear, how to tell the difference between reality and hope. Fish don't keep time, he says. A sub keeps time even when it's trying not to. He taps his finger to a rhythm too regular for nature and watches comprehension dawn. The kid nods, chastened, and the shack returns to the business of waiting with purpose. News filters in like weather. Frupak's codebreakers are chewing on traffic. There are indications the Japanese line has frayed past usefulness. Skippers warned to shift or pull back. There is also talk of a particular boat, RO105, serving as a pivot in the net. Names carry a myth weight until you put steel to them. Pendleton takes the paper without changing expression, passes it along, folds his hands in his pockets, and stands on the bridge wing looking at water that refuses to offer lessons. May 30th bleeds into May 31st. Heat presses down in a manner that feels personal. The mess dishes out a stew both too salty and exactly right. A bosun straightens a locker and curses a hinge that will not accept its station in life. At 14:30, Raby's voice comes in tight and businesslike. Possible periscope wake, bearing 290, distance short. England is already bending toward it before the last syllable clicks off the set. Williamson's face doesn't change. His hands simply find the thing they were made to do. General quarters, general quarters! The ship inhales, then becomes a machine whose parts remember their positions better than their names. The sound in the shack hardens from a scatter to a line. There, faint, high. A three-bladed signature massaged by thermals. Target bearing steady 287, range decreasing. Bernhardt can feel the target trying to become a rumor. He refuses it that luxury. The first Hedgehog pattern lands in futility, the ocean swallowing the bombs like stones dropped down a dry well. Regain, Williamson says, and his voice is patient because patience is a weapon. The second run comes in with the ship's angle right and the helm smooth, and still the target flinches out from under. Somewhere ahead, in a cramped, red-lit room, a Japanese officer grips a bulkhead and wills his boat to be water. The third run is a hunter's slow breath taken before the arrow goes. Fire. Detonations? None. Which is the most dangerous answer of all, because it can smell like failure or feel like a feint. On the net, Haynes opens the geometry another notch, swinging George wide to close a door he thinks the sub might be aiming for. England's deck is slick with its own urgency. Reacquired 282, closing. Bernhardt is inside the sound now, the way a violinist is inside a note. Come right 1, ahead 16, hold. Williamson rides the bearing like a knife's edge. The Hedgehog crew is down to the motion that comes after thought. Fire! 2 crisp hits, then a pause long enough for every man to build a future in his head and watch it break, and then a third, deeper, like something heavy set down on a wooden floor in the room beneath you. The ship rises as if the sea has shrugged. A sheet of air boils up. Oil follows. Someone on the bow says softly, "God," and then shuts his mouth because what else is there to say? Mark time 15:08. Plot. CIC's pencil stops tapping. The chart gains another cross. Haynes does not congratulate so much as realign. England, hold present position. Raby, George, rake eastward at 3000. We'll box anything else this one was talking to. Out here, you assume company. You assume nothing dies alone. After the run, hands shake because bodies need a place to put the excess. A machinist's mate puts his palm on the warm skin of the forward bulkhead and lets the thrum sink into him. In the wardroom, a yeoman pencils the kill into a folder with a deliberate neatness that feels like respect. In the shack, Bernhardt loosens his headset and pinches the bridge of his nose and smiles, small and private, before the ping calls him back. Evening grinds the light down to a hard rim. The 3 destroyer escorts square the comb again, the ocean their blackboard, the chalk lines invisible until you understand the grammar. A flying fish spangs off the lifeline and flaps indignantly on deck, before a deckhand flips it back to whatever passes for destiny among fish. A petty officer from Ohio checks the fuses on the Hedgehog mount one more time, murmuring his farm boy catechism to a weapon made of stubbornness and iron. Night drops. The sky powders itself with stars. TBS crackles and goes quiet. England runs at 14 knots into a darkness thick as felt, the forward projector black against a blacker sea. The only bright things the eyes of men who have learned to see patterns where others see night. Somewhere ahead, another screw turns, a lonely metronome tapping out a schedule that has run out of days. Williamson feels the ship under his hands as though it were a living thing. Pendleton steps onto the wing, wind peeling tears from the corner of his eyes he will claim are from the spray. The ping goes on, steady as a heart. Contact possible, 271 relative, Bernhardt says, voice level as if announcing the weather. Slow bearing rate, depth uncertain. The shape of the hunt falls into place again, as inevitable as gravity. May 30th, 1944. The night tastes of metal and rain. England runs with her lights murdered and her wake pared to a whisper, the forward Hedgehog black and waiting. Far astern, Manus lies over the horizon like a rumor of dry land and rearmament. Gunners and mount crews still smell the grease they pressed into the projector spigots at Sea Adler Harbor. They had dashed in, counted boxes of reloads like misers, and dashed back out because the ocean was holding a place for them. One last RO boat to tear from the line. The log says, replenished at Manus, resumed hunt. And it's true, though it does not say how men slept with their boots on so as not to lose an hour. 1:44. A new voice cuts across the net. Destroyer Hazelwood, a greyhound among tin cans, out on a separate sweep, reporting a radar seed 6,000 yards off her bow. The contact dives like a coin flicked into black water. Hazelwood rolls into a quick attack, depth charges stepping down the night. The sea shrugs and goes quiet. In minutes, George and Raby slide in, their sonars taking up the wire. They trade Hedgehog ripples with a slippery, stubborn target that keeps changing its rhythm. Somewhere down there, a Japanese skipper is playing the bearings like a violin, trying to make music out of noise. For hours, the picture is all effort. Runs set up, patterns away, detonation bubbles that never quite add up to finality. Hazelwood fades. Spangler arrives to lend teeth. The geometry keeps shifting, but the animal in the middle refuses to tire. Dawn rolls a gray lid back from the world. England comes up from the southeast on a zig that feels, to the men on her bridge, like coming home to an argument they intend to finish. Lieutenant Commander Walton B. Pendleton steps out to the wing and squints into the hard light. Lieutenant J.G. John A. Williamson has the con, jaw set, hands loose but decisive, on the wheel. TBS, England on station, the radio man says, voice even. On the chart in CIC, the tracks of 4 escorts look like a cat has clawed the paper all night. In the sonar shack, Seaman Roger Bernhardt settles headphones over ears that ring and lets the ping begin to stitch a new picture. 7:29. A line hardens on Bernhardt's scope. Clean, steady, real. Contact gained, bearing 27, steady, good sound. Williamson doesn't look up. Stand by, Hedgehog. Come right to, ahead 1-5. The mount crew is already moving, caps gleaming on fuse noses. They have done this so often that the body remembers before the mind can worry. England noses onto the bearing. The bow lift is exact. The rudder answer a whisper. Fire. 24 projectiles hiss away, an iron wreath thrown into the sea 200 yards ahead. There is the longest 10 count a man can live. Then, 3 flat, intimate knocks that you feel more than hear. The sound of contact fuses doing the one thing they were made to do. A deeper concussion follows, heavy and authoritative, the ocean pronouncing a verdict. Hits, CIC reports as if tallying flour. Hold course. Oil rises in black fans within the circle. Bubbles ladder up from somewhere no one can see. 2 hours later, the water brings up flotsam, chips of wood, a cork float, a ribbon of torn rubber, scraps that mean steel split and air went where air should never go. Debris is logged and fished aboard, not as trophies, but as witnesses. On the board in CIC, another small cross blooms at a set of numbers that will read dull to strangers and holy to these men. RO 105. Last pivot of the Japanese picket line north of the Admiralties goes under with all hands. What the log will not say, that the hunt began the night before with Hazelwood's first scent. That George and Raby spent hours throwing patterns at a foe that would not hold still. That Spangler arrived, missed, and circled to block an exit. That England, freshly fed with hedgehogs from Manus, slid into the melee and made the single clean salvo that mattered. However many attacks it took, over 30 hours of contact and counter, over and over, iron and patience, the ending looks to the men on England's forecastle like all endings at sea. Sudden, small, and terribly quiet. England, maintain present. George, Raby, Spangler, rake eastward 3,000. Commander Hamilton Haynes's voice on TBS has the calm of a man rearranging furniture in a familiar room. You never assume the last enemy died alone. The net breathes and stretches. Bearings are called and acknowledged. Coffee goes around in chipped mugs grained with oil. On the bridge, Pendleton takes the cigarette he has not lit and tucks it back into the pack. He looks like a foreman signing the final line on a job card he started 12 days ago. The presidential unit citation and the gold-painted board in a museum do not exist in him yet. There is only the work. Below, in the heat where the ship's thrum is a physical thing, a machinist mate palms the warm skin of a bulkhead and lets his pulse sink to it. In the wardroom, a yeoman files the report in a folder that has fattened indecently fast. In the shack, Bernhardt pinches the bridge of his nose, sips water that tastes like tin, and slides the headphones back on, because sometimes a wounded sub hits bottom and lies, and sometimes another one is stupid enough to come look for her friend. On deck, the Hedgehog crew swabs the mount with the same careful movements they use for a pet they call ugly to keep from calling it holy. The petty officer from Ohio touches each fuse nose like a rosary bead and mutters his farm boy catechism. Do your job and we'll do ours. A flying fish flips once on the non-skid and is helped back into the astonishing, indifferent ocean. At noon, Manus orders ride the air. Fuel, food, ammunition. The escorts begin to bear away by turns, neat as the teeth on a key. The men are more tired than they know. The fatigue will ambush them when the ship is still and the ping is gone. For now, the voices on TBS are clipped, professional, and somehow intimate after nights like this. Names will follow later. I-16, RO-106, RO-104, RO-116, RO-108, RO-105. 6 kills in 13 days, a record men do not boast about because they have seen what it looks like up close. Late afternoon, sky the color of hammered tin. England steadies on a leg for Sea Adler. Pendleton leans a knuckle on the brass rim of the gyro repeater and finally lets his shoulders drop a fraction. Williamson, at the wheel, watches the wake lie flat and white astern. Good sound, Bernhardt had said in the moment before the salvo. Those 2 words the whole ship lives on out here. Now the headset hangs on its hook. The shack light glows like a coal in a quiet stove. The XO takes a breath that does not have work in it and lets it go. Out on the wing, the skipper tips his head up. Clouds are stacking over Manus, some are high and heavy. Somewhere behind them is a pier and a storehouse with more hedgehogs and depth cans. And somewhere beyond that, a war that will keep demanding small ships do large things. A bosun's pipe trills, sea routine, ordinary, blessedly so. The ship keeps time. The ocean forgets quickly, the men do not. Night comes again as if nothing had happened. But in the log, in the men, in the water itself, a gap has been torn. The Japanese picket line that was meant to warn of carriers is gone, broken not by cruisers and fleet destroyers, but by 3 little escorts that learned how to hear. In a world that still likes its heroes large, the Hedgehog's ugly crown sits where a myth should be. Resume base course, Williamson says softly. The helmsman answers. The bow lifts and settles, steady as a heart. Far below, there is a quiet no one will ever hear. June 1st, 1944. Sea Adler Harbor, Manus. England eases her scuffed bow against the fenders, and the ship exhales, steam, heat, men on lines who finally let their shoulders sag. The Hedgehog's 24 spigots sit mute under a patina of salt, a crown of iron that made its own liturgy at sea. On the pier, crates of ammunition and sacks of mail wait like punctuation marks. Inside CIC, the chart from the last 12 days has been rolled and rubber banded. The pencil scars that once looked like a cat's claw mark now read like a lesson plan in geometry and nerve. Pendleton signs off the deck log with the same tidy hand he used on the morning of May 19th, when England, Raby, and George began the hunt that would end with 6 submarines down. The first was I-16, found and finished on 19th May. By the time the escort division turned for Manus to reload Hedgehogs on 27th May, RO-106, RO-114, and RO-116 had joined her on the bottom. They sailed back out on the 28th, took RO-108 on the 26th's ledger, and after a grim, multi-ship round-the-clock chase, hammered RO-105 under at 0729 on 31 May. 12 days on the calendar, 6 hulls gone, a picket screen unraveled. The tally is ugly and exact. The debrief is not a ceremony. It's a table in the wardroom and the smell of black coffee and damp paper. Williamson talks through each attack set like a craftsman, explaining his cut list. He speaks in bearings, ranges, target motion analysis, in how you keep a wire tight through a thermal's slick lie. The soundmen, Bernhardt and the kids he taught to hear the difference between nature and intention, take turns describing the signature of a wounded sub. The way bubbles and broken metal make a dirty background that will seduce you into chasing ghosts if you let it. The projector crew lays out their routine. Reload times measured by feel, the knack of keeping fuse noses clean when spray turns everything to paste, the superstition of touching each bomb before it leaves your hands because someday, when it hits, that touch will feel like a handshake. The officers from George and Raby nod. They've lived the same math and the same fatigue. And when the Hazelwood and Spangler men wander in later, they bring the same vocabulary of angles, patience, and stubbornness from the RO-105 chase that shifted between four ships for over a day before England's salvo finally wrote the ending. What the ocean taught is simple and merciless. Speed is not courage. Size is not authority. The Hedgehog, homely, contact-fused, indifferent to rumor, turns anti-submarine war from guesswork to verdict. You do not rake the sea and hope. You hold a bearing like a taut wire. You throw iron ahead, and you listen for the only truth that matters, those clean, flat knocks that say steel met explosive at the same instant in the same water. If you do not hear them, you do not pretend you did. You recalc, you turn, you fire again, and you keep at it until the ocean answers with oil or silence. Nothing about it is romantic. Everything about it is human. Warfare History Network. The official papers will find careful words for the 6 kills. EDANFS will file the dates and the positions as neat entries in a ship's biography. The H-gram will put the sequence in a paragraph and remind readers that England and her sisters only paused between hunts long enough to reload before going back out to add the last cross to the chart on 31 May. But the thing that moves through the room is not prose. It's the memory of the first crisp detonations on RO-106 before sunrise on the 22nd. The hard-won quiet after RO-104 folded on the 23rd. The slippery water and mean patience of RO-116 on the 24th. The night zone hunt that ended RO-108 on the 26th. And the long, many-handed wrestle that finally broke RO-105 on the 31st. The names become real not because they are written down, but because the men can still feel each hit in their boot soles. There's talk, courteous and dry, about the intelligence that set all of this in motion. The radio traffic that sketched a Japanese NA line of submarines strung north of the Admiralties as a tripwire for any American carrier thrust. The line was strong as an idea and weak as physics. A submarine picket is only a chain of single points, and single points can be isolated and hammered. England did not so much find the line as teach it that a screen without massed counterattack behind it is a list of future memorials. The lesson is new enough to feel like heresy. It will not stay new for long. In the days that follow, the officers' mess gathers rumor into mosaic. A history-minded sailor says he heard the CNO back in Washington tossed off a line when the tally reached the fleet. There'll always be an England in the United States Navy. Then the words, if he said them, do what good words do. They stick. But they are not why the deck gang wipes salt from steel and the mount crew swabs their spigots. They work because work is what keeps you alive. The quote will follow England into peacetime, painted on a bulkhead in a newer ship, but here in Manus, it's the names and the dates that matter. Pendleton walks the pier late and alone. He is not a speechmaker. He is the man who leans a knuckle against the gyro repeater, who listens more than he talks, who takes the XO's quiet competence and turns it into the ship's posture. When he thinks about the run, he hears people. Haynes's TBS voice, level and spare. Bernhardt's good sound, that meant shoot now. The Mount Captain's farm boy catechism. Do your job and we'll do ours. He thinks of the enemy only as a rhythm, the three-bladed beat, the sudden falter that means a hull has torn. He does not try to make poetry out of it. He lets the water do its forgetting. He counts the living, not the dead. On a hot afternoon, a photographer catches England broadside, clean and small, against the hammered tin sky. There is no banner in the frame, no triumphant tableau. You would never know, looking at the lines of her, a Buckley-class escort with 3 3-inch guns, a Hedgehog on the bow, K-guns on the quarters, that she has done a thing that will still be called a record generations from now. You would not see how, inside that modest hull, a crew learned to listen past fear and fatigue until only right angles and right moments remained. You would not hear the ping, the quiet, the knocks like a gloved fist on steel. You would see a tin can and think ordinary, and you would be right, which is why you would be wrong. The orders come down. Sortie again. Rejoin the moving front where carriers and transports and big gun ships rewrite islands into staging areas. England will screen, plane guard, run picket, do all the small jobs that keep large things possible. She will not spend the rest of the war hunting submarines one by one. The moment that made her name has already happened, and names are not what do work at sea. Men are, routines are, ugly little machines that tell the truth are. That night, under a sky that remembers nothing, the sound shack is dark. The headset hangs from its hook. On the mess table, a dog-eared detective novel lies face down, a coffee ring haloing a sentence about inevitability. Somewhere far beyond Manus, in water where no one speaks, a broken hull settles into silt. In Sea Adler Harbor, a tin can breathes, resupplies, and waits for the next job. When the ship finally eases away from the pier, the wake uncurls white and exact, and the bow finds its old rhythm. Lift, settle, steady as a heart. It is not triumph that rides the hawse, it is continuity. The ocean will forget, the chart will hold its pencil crosses, the men will carry the knocks in their bones.